March 3, 1845, Florida joins the Union as the 27th state. Governor William Moseley declares, "Florida should be a land of opportunity and natural beauty." Floridians were filled with hope. They believed their state would be a paradise of prosperity and freedom. The Florida dream was born. But fast forward to today, and that dream is drowning. Florida faces unprecedented challenges at home and abroad. Its coastlines are eroding, its politics are divisive, and its reputation is tarnished. The Sunshine State is losing its glow. This is the decline of Florida's paradise. If you talk to everyday Floridians, they'll often express deep concerns about their state's future. They'll share how growing up they believed in Florida's unique allure, that warm weather and low taxes would lead to success and a comfortable life. But with rising sea levels, skyrocketing insurance costs, and extreme political polarization, this belief has become a fantasy. Governor Ron DeSantis, once hailed as a rising star in national politics, has become a lightning rod for controversy. His war on woke has led to clashes with major corporations, educational institutions, and even local governments. The backlash against his policies has been swift and severe, with many businesses and events choosing to boycott the state. Take the Don't Say Gay bill, for instance. This legislation, officially known as the Parental Rights in Education Act, has sparked nationwide outrage and legal challenges. But it's not just about social issues. The economic impact has been significant. Disney, one of Florida's largest employers, found itself in a public feud with DeSantis, resulting in the dissolution of its special tax district and potentially billions in economic losses for the state. Governor DeSantis has silenced discussions on race and racism through the Stop Woke Act, which he signed in April 2022. The measure restricts discussions of race, gender, and equality. But now he has doubled down by signing into law Senate Bill 266, which prohibits Florida colleges and universities from spending money on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Schools also will not be able to spend money on programs or activities that promote or engage in political or social activism, as defined by the State Board of Education or the University System's Board of Governors, which is interesting because we cannot progress past the worst moments in our nation's history if we're barred from discussing them. How can we improve? The sad part, Florida's policies weren't always this divisive. In fact, for much of its history, it was known as a purple state with a mix of conservative and liberal policies. But in the last few years, political polarization has increased so much that it has forced many citizens to question their future in the state. If you're finding value in our exploration of Florida's challenges and want to stay updated on crucial information about the world, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us continue bringing you insightful content that matters. Even if you can navigate the political landscape, you aren't getting the stability previous generations enjoyed. Take property insurance, for example. The average annual premium in Florida is over $4,200, nearly 3 times the national average. Who wants to spend that much on insurance when you can get comparable coverage for a fraction of the cost in many other states? But not everyone is concerned about politics, and many are more focused on Florida's environmental challenges. But Florida's environment is just as precarious as its political climate. Due to climate change, sea level rise, and poor urban planning, Florida's coastlines and ecosystems are under severe threat. Hurricane Ian in 2022 was a vivid reminder of Florida's vulnerability. It caused over $50 billion in damages, making it one of the costliest hurricanes in U.S. history. The state's response and recovery efforts were criticized as inadequate, leaving many Floridians feeling abandoned by their government. And just when Floridians thought they might catch a break, Hurricane Idalia struck in 2023, causing further devastation. The increasing frequency and intensity of these storms are putting unprecedented strain on Florida's infrastructure and economy. The low levels of action on climate resilience are leading to a realignment of perception. Insurers and homebuyers realize that Florida, once known for its idyllic beaches, is now struggling to keep its head above water. The reputation for paradise is suffering as we continue to face repeated environmental crises. Hurricane Milton, which struck Florida as a Category 3 storm in October 2024, caused significant devastation throughout the state. The storm left at least 24 people dead and a vast number of residents without power, causing an immediate and severe humanitarian crisis which continued to get worse. The financial toll of the hurricane is staggering, with reconstruction costs estimated at a massive $175 billion. This catastrophe is likely to amplify Florida's housing crisis as demand for construction materials rises sharply. Furthermore, the anticipated increase in claims related to property damage will place additional strain on an already fragile insurance market. The outcome? Florida's ability to attract retirees and tourists continues to decline and will do so for years to come. For example, Florida has failed to adequately address sea level rise despite repeated warnings and has been criticized for its lack of comprehensive climate action. After decades of being known as America's retirement haven, Florida is struggling to maintain its appeal. All of this is compounded by economic challenges that hamper Florida's ability to invest in resilience. In fact, many would argue that the state's reliance on tourism and real estate is making it impossible to pursue a sustainable future. The problem with Florida's decline is a combination of short-term thinking and external pressures. On the economic front, Florida has become overly reliant on the service sector and real estate. Since 2000, the state's dependence on tourism has increased, making Florida vulnerable to global economic fluctuations and health crises like pandemics. To make matters worse, there are deep structural issues in the Florida economy. The state has struggled to diversify beyond its traditional strengths in tourism and agriculture. That is a dangerous position, leaving Florida exposed to the impacts of climate change and shifting travel patterns. Furthermore, most Floridians are concerned about the growing inequality, placing a disproportionate amount of pressure on households already struggling with rising costs. For example, while Florida has seen job growth, many of these jobs are low-wage service positions, leaving workers unable to keep up with increasing living expenses. Economic vulnerability isn't the only reason for Florida's decline, but Florida has underinvested in its future for decades. In fact, Florida ranks near the bottom in per-pupil education spending, similar to Texas, ranking 41st in the United States at $9,871, falling behind many other states in preparing its workforce for the future. There is growing inequality in access to quality education. To receive adequate schooling is nearly impossible for many Floridians due to the state's underfunding of public education and controversial policies that have led to teacher shortages. This has led to an education system that threatens Florida's future workforce and economic potential. It is estimated that Florida faces a shortage of over 10,000 teachers, one of the highest in the nation. Why? Low pay, challenging work conditions, and political controversy surrounding curriculums and classroom policies, falling behind many other states in preparing its workforce for the future. Of course, you can't fix decades of neglect overnight, and in Florida, short-term political cycles often trump long-term planning. Politicians often prioritize short-term electoral success over long-term societal benefits. While policy discussions are ongoing, crucial investments in education, healthcare, and infrastructure frequently take a backseat to more pressing issues. Aware of this dynamic, elected representatives typically shy away from advocating for essential yet contentious reforms, fearing potential electoral consequences. Furthermore, the state's aversion to income taxes often leads to underfunding of critical services, making coordinated actions difficult. A part of the reason for this dysfunction is the growing political polarization. From 2000 to 2023, Florida has become increasingly divided along political lines. This polarization makes it difficult for the government to implement ambitious policies or rally the state around common goals. Another critical pain point for Florida is the changing climate landscape. Florida's traditional strengths in agriculture and tourism are under direct threat from climate change. But what has Florida done to adapt to these changes? Honestly, not enough. The state is caught between its economic reliance on beachfront development and the need to retreat from rising seas. Climate resilience is just one component of this decline. What about Florida's economic competitiveness? The state has long prided itself on its low tax environment, but this advantage is eroding. Other states are catching up, offering similar or better incentives to businesses while maintaining more stable environments. One of the reasons for Florida's economic challenges is the failure to invest in a diversified, skilled workforce. But it's not just about high-tech industries. Florida has also struggled to address its high rate of uninsured residents, leaving many workers vulnerable to health crises that can derail their economic stability. The critical example of this is in healthcare access, which is amongst the worst in the nation. Not only this, but the state government has been slow to expand healthcare coverage, leading to concerns about public health and missed economic opportunities. This story of government inaction leading to long-term challenges is nothing new. For example, Florida has failed to adequately address water quality issues, a critical problem in a state surrounded by water. Floridians face increasing concerns about toxic algal blooms, and tourism is threatened by polluted beaches and dying marine life. The state's water woes have sparked heated debates among Floridians and their representatives. Efforts to implement sweeping water management reforms have hit roadblocks, with several lawmakers voicing opposition. Their resistance stems from a surge in constituent concerns about the potential economic fallout of such measures. As one state senator put it, "We're walking a tightrope between environmental protection and economic stability." This tension has led to a patchwork of half measures, leaving Florida's water crisis largely unsolved. Environmental groups argue that this piecemeal approach is insufficient to address the magnitude of the problem, while business interests warn of job losses and economic downturn if stricter regulations are imposed. The toxic algae crisis reached a boiling point in South Florida, where residents faced the grim reality of their livelihoods washing away in a sea of green slime. Caught between preserving an ecosystem and protecting local economies, state officials have fumbled for solutions. The result, a cluster of half measures that satisfy neither environmentalists nor business owners, leaving Florida's waters in a precarious state. As one local fisherman put it, "It's like watching our future dissolve in these polluted waters, and no one seems to have a plan to fix it." Recently, the government has pushed the narrative that technological solutions will solve the water crisis. However, experts have clarified that while this may help, systematic changes in water management and land use are necessary for long-term sustainability. But this isn't just limited to environmental policy. Floridians experience challenges across multiple sectors because of government inaction or misguided interventions. The most glaring example is in property insurance. Despite being one of the wealthiest states, Florida's property insurance market is in crisis, with rates skyrocketing and insurers leaving the state. The craziest part is that despite the state's economic strength, Florida is facing an insurance affordability crisis. In most states, such a mismatch between economic resources and insurance market stability would lead to major reforms. But in Florida, short-term political considerations often prevent meaningful change, similar to education. Now, I could list a million more examples, but the conclusion is the same. Florida's future prosperity is at risk. To counter this is to reinvest in the foundations of Florida's success: its people, its environment, and its innovative spirit. However, the state has struggled to do this. Since 2000, Florida has seen a widening income gap, while many other states have worked to address inequality. This growing divide is partially responsible for increasing disillusionment with the Florida dream and a reduction in optimism about the future. One of the drivers for this decline is increasing political polarization. Florida politics have become increasingly divisive. But why hasn't this led to major reforms? Simply put, the political system is often more responsive to ideological positions than to pragmatic solutions for average citizens. Another reason is the decline of social cohesion. Most Floridians report feeling more divided than ever before. These divisions have no real benefit for the state, leading to a paralysis in addressing common challenges. Florida has seen a major shift in its demographics, weakening the collective voice of long-term residents in shaping policy. Voter turnout in Florida is inconsistent and volatile, contributing to policies that don't necessarily reflect the need of most Floridians. But one could argue that Florida has faced challenges before and has always emerged stronger. But the overall fix for the state seems more complicated. The state has struggled to define a clear vision for its future in a changing world, meaning it hasn't really adapted to the 21st century landscape. All efforts by leaders to articulate a new vision for Florida have fallen short, but this is not simply limited to grand strategy. Florida is seeing an erosion of its reputation like never before. Each year, more businesses and individuals are reconsidering Florida as a destination, and the state's appeal as a tourist haven is facing stiff competition from other regions. And why wouldn't this be happening? For The world is becoming more focused on sustainability. The cost of living in Florida's major cities is rising, and other states are investing heavily in their own development. The loser in this scenario is not just Florida, but the American economy. It is long bolstered through tourism and retirement spending. As Florida's influence continues to wane, the state's ability to shape natural policy and protect its interests will face increasing challenges. Let's hope Florida can reinvent itself once again. The future of the American Southeast may depend on it.